Welcome to the Holocaust Center for Humanities Museum. We realize that many of you have never been to our museum, and so we invite you on a short tour of our exhibit, Finding Light in the Darkness. This exhibit is not a journey through a timeline of Holocaust history, but rather a walk through the human experience that was the Holocaust. We focus on the stories of local survivors as a way to find empathy, because when we find empathy, we can no longer see someone else as other. Teaching through stories opens doors to both history and compassion. In each phase of our exhibit, we learn about the Holocaust and that these lessons are relevant today. I'd like to start with this artifact, a book written by Nobel Prize winner Thomas Mann. You can see a red V for verboten, forbidden, inside the cover. Thousands of books written by dissidents and Jewish authors were banned and burned. The burning of books led to the closing of newspapers and access to information. Ultimately, the misinformation machine turned the country against its own people. Jews became the villains. This artifact teaches us about the dangers of a controlled media and misinformation. It teaches us about our obligation to seek the truth, question our sources, and understand the difference between fact and opinion. This section of our exhibit is called Changing World. How did a civil society turn against its own people? What was that slippery slope, and how can we recognize and prevent it when it begins? This doll tells the story of a 17-year-old girl, Canis. Her family was in the Dutch underground and hid 40 Jewish people in their home. Ali was imprisoned and spent 5 months as a slave laborer. Stifled by the brutal conditions in the prison, she made this doll, finding scraps of cloth, thread, and even human hair. In an act of rebellion, she wrote, "Keep smiling," in English, in support of the Allies. This artifact teaches us today about resilience in times of adversity. We learn about countries, families, and individuals who at great risk rescued Jews. She challenges us to examine what moral courage looks like. This section of our exhibit is called Flight and Rescue. As the world closed its doors to Jewish refugees, Jews were left with few options. Many went into hiding, others were deported to camps and ghettos. In this section, we begin to understand the deportations and the killing machine. In our collection, we have a blanket that belonged to Siegfried Friedrich. He was deaf and miraculously survived Auschwitz and other camps because the Nazis valued his skills as a tailor. On a death march with typhus and biting cold weather, Friedrich had a blanket. Near death himself, he chose to share that blanket with 5 other men during the march. In doing so, he tries to save their lives, and in this act, saves our faith in humanity. Against all odds, he teaches us that we all have a responsibility and the ability to change the future. In this section, Ghettos and Camps, we learn that the Nazis could have never killed 6 million Jewish people and countless others without the willing collaboration and complicity of millions of people in every country they occupied. It challenges us to think about how we walk in the world today. In Liberation, we learn about the aftermath of genocide, trials, refugees, and the establishment of the State of Israel. We learn about other genocides and eventually how so many of the survivors found their way to Seattle. And finally, we end our exhibit with one question: what will you do? I often ask students, where did the violence begin? Did it begin in the camps? Or did it begin on a school playground where one child called another child a dirty Jew? Finding light in the darkness teaches us that we all have the power to change the things we can see: stereotypes, scapegoating, jokes, and name-calling. We all have a responsibility and the ability to change the future. Change begins with me.